I think the comparison with 1936 is certainly right, and I think it's an emetic prospect, frankly, for to think of Putin glorying in this sporting event.
That was Boris Johnson comparing the prospect of a Russian World Cup to Hitler's Olympics, and he may now be eating his words. In the run-up to the event, tabloids were rife with fears of hooliganism and questioned how a country with such a questionable human rights record could be given such a prestigious event. But the tournament went off almost without a hitch. In fact, FIFA's president called it the best one in history. So, is Russia owed an apology, or did the tournament simply whitewash abuses by the Kremlin? Let's ask our panel. Joining us from Moscow is political analyst Maria Lipman. And from London, we have member of the British Parliament for the Labour Party, Toby Perkins. I thank you both for joining us. Toby, let me start with you. Boris Johnson's comments after that World Cup sound a little silly now, don't they?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think his comments were silly in so much as he was suggesting that England may pull out, which I didn't think was ever realistic at that stage. But I had been one of those 2 years before this, saying that as Russia were operating in a way, not just in terms of the human rights violations at home, but much more about their role overseas with issues like the murder of British citizens on British soil, with the annexation of Crimea, with the murder of Sergei Magnitsky and many other examples of Russian aggression overseas, that as they were continuing to operate as a pariah society, they shouldn't be given the prestige of hosting the World Cup. Now, it was never a case of saying that they were a country that wouldn't be capable of hosting one, but it was saying that the international community should be taking a stance.
But they had it. Is there any evidence that they overtly politicized the World Cup in order to push any of those issues? Or would you concede that, no, they didn't?
I think that the World Cup was broadly a success. I mean, of course, we saw Putin there shielding under his umbrella as the Croatian premier bravely faced the rain. But broadly, it was a PR success for Russia, I believe. But that was never the point that I was making at the time. OK,
so Maria Lipman, we still have the criticism from Toby Perkins saying that Russia shouldn't have had it in the first place. And even though within the paradigm of the tournament, we didn't see the homophobia, the racism, the issues of Crimea or whatever it is. We didn't see any of that, but that's irrelevant because Russia still shouldn't have had it. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think it's a great thing that Russia had it for a number of reasons. I think if there had been a boycott, I don't think this was in any way to have been expected, but if Russia had been boycotted, the World Cup would have been. I wonder who would have benefited. I wonder why antagonizing Russia even further makes the world a better place or a more secure one. And also, I think this World Cup, which certainly was a success, and not just in terms of PR. It was a fun event for many people from all over the world to be able to come to Russia, to rejoice, to witness excellent soccer, to enjoy the hospitality of the Russian people, show the world a different Russia or another aspect of Russia. This would not be to whitewash any of the obvious things that cause criticism upon Russia, probably deserved. But there is another aspect of Russia that the world cannot see because of how the Western media cover Russia, always giving it a very ugly look. And now, you know, Russia was hospitable, it was open, it was welcoming, it was happy, and none of the unpleasant issues that you mentioned were actually in any way apparent during the World Cup.
Toby? Any of what Maria's saying resonate with you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that I would agree with there. I mean, I think, you know, it's never been my argument that the Russians are bad people, and what we saw there was entirely correct, that it was a welcoming opportunity for people to enjoy this festival of football, and it's absolutely true that there's many good Russian people that want to see Russia being more open with the rest of the world. I think where I would disagree theory is that I think the very awarding of the World Cup to Russia, and the sense that the footballing and global community was willing to simply overlook all of the abuses that I referred to previously in the name of enjoying the festival of football, is where the problem existed. I was never suggesting that people should boycott the Russian World Cup. I was suggesting that FIFA should move it elsewhere, and that government should put pressure on FIFA to move it elsewhere until Russia were able to act in a way that increased the global security rather than reduced it. And it's not about wanting to antagonize Russia, but it is about recognizing that you can't, on the one hand, increase the global insecurity, and on the other hand, be treated as a nation that gains the prestige of hosting the World Cup. But I think it did show the Russian people in a very good light.
Okay, Maria, like all the others of hundreds of millions of people, or maybe even billions of people who were watching yesterday, we all got a little glimpse of some streakers onto the field. They were Pussy Riot, as far as I understand. Have a little listen to what Pussy Riot had to say about this World Cup, and I'll get a response from you afterwards. Maria?
The World Cup has shown wonderfully what the police can be like in Russia. But what will happen afterwards?
Okay, so, Maria, we have Olga Kuracheva going from Pussy Riot that, okay, you know what, the police were kind of not so bad during this World Cup and everything was sort of okay, but let's see what happens afterwards, right? Let me honestly ask you, okay, it was a successful month, Maria, but will that spirit of openness and maybe the softer approach, particularly from Russian police, will that endure after the World Cup?
Probably not. I think the world and Russia will go back to the usual. I think if the NATO summit is any indication, that the perception of Russia in the world, among the world leaders, has not changed because of this very successful World Cup. The resolution of NATO sees Russia as a threat, as before, has a long list of accusations for all kinds of crimes and sins, and never shows even a glimpse of desire to share the responsibility for the current confrontation, because I'm positive that at least part of the world is on the West, not all on Russia. So if that is any indication, I think the success of the World Cup will remain as pleasant memories, as happy memories for Russians and all the guests and fans and tourists, but it will not affect the international relations and the way Russia is perceived and treated by the West.
Okay, well, let's keep that short and sharp. It's been a pleasure having both of you on the Newsmakers, Maria Lipman and Toby Perkins. Hope to have you on again. Thanks for joining us.